If extra virgin olive oil is the most regulated food grade in Europe, why does the United States have no legally enforceable federal standard defining what it means and who benefits from that void? The EU Protected Designation of Origin system ensures that a bottle labeled Parmigiano Reggiano or Champagne contains exactly what the name promises, backed by law, testing, and criminal penalties for fraud. Italy's anti-fraud police, the Guardia di Finanza and the Carabinieri, conduct annual raids seizing hundreds of thousands of gallons of adulterated olive oil. In December 2023, Europol coordinated arrests of 11 people across Italy and Spain who had adulterated over 260,000 liters of olive oil with lamponte oil, a grade so degraded it was historically used to fuel lamps and cannot legally be sold as food. Yet in the United States, the term extra virgin olive oil has no legally enforceable federal definition. The USDA offers voluntary grading standards. The FDA offers guidance. Neither agency requires testing. Neither agency mandates enforcement. And the result is the most counterfeited food product in the world being sold on American shelves with less regulatory protection than a bag of potato chips. A landmark study by the UC Davis Olive Center, published in 2010 and expanded in 2011, tested the top-selling imported extra virgin olive oil brands sold in California. 69% of imported samples labeled extra virgin failed to meet the International Olive Council's sensory standards, meaning they had defects like rancidity, mustiness, or fustiness that disqualify them from the extra virgin grade. The brands that failed at the highest rates included Bertolli, Carapelli, Colavita, Star, and Pompeian, among others. 73% of the top-selling imported brands failed both sensory panels. Meanwhile, California-produced oils and a select few imports like Cobram Estate and Lucini had far lower failure rates. The North American Olive Oil Association, the trade group representing major importers, known as NAOOA, has contested the UC Davis findings for over a decade, calling the study biased because it was partially funded by California producers. In 2024, NAOOA commissioned its own study, testing 190 samples from the top 15 brands, and reported finding no confirmed adulteration. A separate FDA study tested 88 extra virgin olive oil samples from Washington area retailers, and also found a low adulteration rate below 5%. These competing narratives illustrate the problem. The industry trade group funds studies that find the product is fine. Independent academic researchers fund studies that find widespread quality failures. The consumer is left to navigate dueling claims with no federal standard to settle the question. And the brands named in the UC Davis study continue to sell their products without any regulatory consequence because the standards they allegedly failed are voluntary. The food and beverage industry spent over $23 million lobbying the federal government in 2025. The olive oil sector has its own lobbying apparatus through NAOOA and other trade organizations. The American Olive Oil Producers Association, representing domestic producers, formally petitioned the FDA in 2020 to establish and enforce quality standards for olive oil, arguing that the current dearth of regulation causes widespread mislabeling, adulteration, consumer mistrust, and unfair business practices. That petition has not resulted in a federal standard of identity. The FDA has not acted, and every year of inaction is another year that the world's most counterfeited food product is sold to American consumers with no legal mechanism to verify that the label matches the bottle. Let us follow the money, brand by brand, loophole by loophole. Number 16. Pompeian is one of the top-selling olive oil brands in the United States. It exposes a voluntary standards loophole. Pompeian had the highest failure rate of any brand in the UC Davis study, with 94% of its samples failing both sensory panels for the extra virgin grade. Pompeian participates in the NAOOA Voluntary Quality Seal program and has disputed the UC Davis findings. But the core regulatory issue remains. The standards for extra virgin olive oil in the United States are voluntary. Participation in quality programs is voluntary. Testing is voluntary. The consequences for selling olive oil that does not meet the extra virgin grade under a company's self-selected voluntary standard are essentially zero. In the European Union, selling olive oil labeled as extra virgin that does not meet the IOC grade standards is a violation of food law, subject to fines, product seizure, and criminal prosecution. In the United States, it is a marketing disagreement. The consumer pays extra virgin prices. Whether they receive extra virgin quality depends entirely on the integrity of the company. The regulatory system does not verify that integrity. Number 15. Star is owned by Grupo Borges, a Spanish multinational. This entry highlights the deodorization detection loophole. Star olive oil was among the brands that failed UC Davis sensory testing at high rates. The more insidious form of olive oil fraud is not mixing olive oil with cheaper vegetable oils. It is a process called soft column deodorization, where steam is forced through a tank of inferior olive oil to remove all taste, color, and defects. The resulting product is then colored, flavored with a small amount of genuine extra virgin oil, and bottled as extra virgin. The International Olive Council does not test for deodorization in its standard battery of tests. The USDA does not test for it either. According to industry reports, deodorized oil makes up the bulk of fraudulent extra virgin olive oil worldwide. The testing infrastructure that would detect it exists, but it is not mandated. The consumer has no defense against a fraud that the testing system was not designed to catch. Number 14. Bertolli, owned by Grupo SOS, was later restructured into D'Olio, the largest bottled olive oil company in the world. This illustrates the corporate consolidation loophole. Bertolli failed UC Davis sensory testing across all 3 California retail locations sampled. In 2017, independent testing found that Bertolli oil labeled extra virgin was actually only virgin grade. D'Olio, Bertolli's parent company, is headquartered in Spain and controls a vast portfolio of olive oil brands around the world. The company went through a major financial restructuring in 2019, raising questions about cost-cutting pressures across its supply chain. When the world's largest olive oil bottler faces financial distress, the pressure to source cheaper oil, blend more aggressively, and cut corners on quality is enormous. The consumer holding a bottle of Bertolli has no way of knowing whether the oil inside reflects the premium heritage the brand's Italian name implies or the cost pressures of a restructured multinational. Number 13. Filippo Berio is owned by Salov, an Italian company majority controlled by the Bright Food Group, a Chinese state-owned enterprise. This reveals a foreign ownership transparency gap. Filippo Berio is one of the most recognizable olive oil brands in the world. It failed UC Davis sensory testing at multiple locations, with samples classified as virgin rather than extra virgin. In 2015, Bright Food Group, a Chinese state-owned food conglomerate, acquired a majority stake in Salov, making one of the most iconic Italian olive oil brands effectively Chinese-owned. The consumer buying Filippo Berio in an American grocery store sees Italian branding, Italian heritage, and Italian imagery. Corporate decisions about sourcing, blending, and quality standards are ultimately made by a Chinese state-owned enterprise. The label does not communicate this ownership structure, and the regulatory system does not require it to. Number 12. Carapelli, also owned by D'Olio. Carapelli is another D'Olio brand that failed UC Davis testing. When a single parent company controls multiple brands on the same shelf, such as Bertolli, Carapelli, and others, consumers perceive choice even though consolidation exists. The oil in differently branded bottles may come from the same blending facilities, be sourced from the same suppliers, and be processed to the same cost-driven specifications. The illusion of market diversity masks the reality of corporate consolidation. 2 brands, 1 corporate decision-maker, 1 set of cost pressures. And there is no federal requirement to disclose that these apparently competing products share a parent company, a supply chain, and a bottom line. Number 11. Colavita. The case highlights the sensory versus chemical testing gap. Colavita failed UC Davis sensory testing at high rates, but it performed better on chemical purity tests. That means the oil was likely genuine olive oil, but it did not meet the quality threshold for the extra virgin grade. This distinction matters because it shows the most common form of olive oil misrepresentation in the American market. The oil is real olive oil. It simply is not good enough to be called extra virgin. It may be rancid, oxidized, or made from overripe or damaged olives. These quality defects eliminate the very health benefits, especially the polyphenol content, that drive consumers to pay premium prices for extra virgin. The consumer pays for extra virgin. They receive virgin or worse. The difference is not detectable on the tongue by most consumers, and no federal testing program exists to catch it. Number 10. Mazola olive oil, the blend labeling loophole. Mazola, owned by ACH Food Companies, a subsidiary of Associated British Foods, sells olive oil blends that combine olive oil with other vegetable oils like canola. These blends are legal and labeled as such, but the presentation can be confusing. A bottle that prominently features the words olive oil with blend in smaller text may lead consumers to believe they are purchasing pure olive oil. The Food and Drug Administration requires that blended products list all oils in the ingredient statement, but the front of package design is often more influential than the back of package ingredient list. The regulatory system requires disclosure in the fine print, while allowing marketing to tell a different story in large print. A consumer who grabs a bottle quickly based on the prominent olive oil branding may not realize they are buying a product that is majority canola oil. Number 9. Mezzetta olive oil. Mezzetta was among the brands that failed UC Davis sensory standards. The company is known primarily for its jarred peppers and olives, but it also sells olive oil. The broader issue with imported Italian olive oil is the journey from mill to shelf. Extra virgin olive oil is a perishable product. Its quality begins to degrade the moment it is pressed. Exposure to heat, light, oxygen, and time all accelerate the breakdown of the polyphenols, antioxidants, and volatile flavor compounds that define the extra virgin grade. Some Italian oil may genuinely be extra virgin at the moment of bottling. By the time it has been shipped across the Atlantic, warehoused, distributed to retail locations, and sat on a grocery shelf under fluorescent lighting, months or years may have passed. The oil that was extra virgin at the mill is no longer extra virgin at the table. The label does not change. The quality does. And no federal requirement mandates a harvest date, a bottling date, or a best buy date based on actual quality testing rather than arbitrary shelf life estimates. Number 8. Great Value Olive Oil, Walmart's store brand, and the private label sourcing opacity loophole. Walmart's Great Value Extra Virgin Olive Oil is among the cheapest available on the American market. The company does not disclose its olive oil supply chain in any meaningful detail. Like all private label products, the actual manufacturer is a third-party processor whose identity is not required to appear on the label. When the world's largest retailer demands the lowest possible price from its suppliers, the incentive structure runs directly counter to quality. The NAOOA 2024 study found no adulteration in private label brands it tested, but adulteration with non-olive oils is not the only concern. Quality degradation, selling virgin-grade oil as extra virgin, and the use of old or poorly stored oil are more common problems. And voluntary testing programs run by the industry trade group are not the same as independent federal enforcement. Number 7. Kirkland Signature Olive Oil from Costco, the premium store brand trust gap. Kirkland Signature Extra Virgin Olive Oil is widely recommended by consumer advocates, and it has performed well in various quality assessments. However, even well-regarded store brands operate without mandatory federal testing. Costco sources its olive oil from various suppliers, and those suppliers can change from season to season. A bottle that tested well in one study may come from a completely different source in the next production run. Without mandatory testing of every batch against a legally enforceable standard, the quality of any store brand olive oil depends on the retailer's procurement standards, not on regulatory oversight. Costco has strong purchasing power and a reputation to protect, which creates an incentive for quality. But the system relies on corporate choice, not legal requirement. Corporate choices can change when cost pressures change. Number 6. Whole Foods 365 brand olive oil. and the premium retailer assumption loophole. Consumers who shop at Whole Foods often assume the store's premium positioning translates to premium product quality. Whole Foods. 365 brand olive oil was among the brands that contained trace cellulose in Bloomberg's Parmesan study, suggesting that even premium retailers' quality control is imperfect. For olive oil, the 365 brand is sourced from various suppliers and subject to the same voluntary standards as any other brand. Bloomberg's independent testing found that even Whole Foods products are not immune to the gap between marketing and reality. The premium price and the curated store environment create an expectation of quality that the regulatory system does not independently verify. Number 5. Store brands from Safeway, Kroger, Aldi, and other major chains, and the race to the bottom. Private label olive oils from major grocery chains compete primarily on price. Safeway's store brand was among those that failed UC Davis sensory testing. When multiple retailers compete to offer the cheapest extra virgin olive oil on the shelf, the sourcing pressure flows downward through the supply chain. Suppliers who provide the cheapest oil win the contracts. The cheapest oil is the most likely to be old, poorly stored, or mislabeled as extra virgin when it is actually virgin or refined. The National Consumers League tested 11 olive oils from major grocery stores, including Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, Safeway, and Giant. 6 of the 11 failed to meet extra virgin standards, more than half. And the regulatory system required nothing and penalized no one. Number 4. Rachel Ray Extra Virgin Olive Oil, packaged by Colavita and the celebrity brand licensing loophole. Rachel Ray brand extra virgin olive oil is bottled by Colavita under a licensing arrangement. In the UC Davis study, Rachel Ray olive oil had 1 passing sample and 2 failing samples in the sensory tests. Many consumers buy Rachel Ray olive oil because they trust the celebrity association with quality cooking. The product is sourced, blended, and bottled under terms the consumer never sees. Celebrity brand licensing in the food industry means the famous name on the label often has little to do with the product inside. The celebrity lends their reputation. The manufacturer provides the oil. The regulatory system treats the final product the same as any other brand, regardless of the premium price the celebrity association commands. Number 3. Imported oils labeled Product of Italy with no specific producer identification. This is the origin laundering loophole. Italy is the world's 2nd largest olive oil producer, but its largest exporter. This mathematical anomaly is explained by the fact that Italy imports massive quantities of olive oil from Spain, Tunisia, Greece, and other countries, blends it, bottles it in Italy, and legally exports it as product of Italy. This practice is legal under both EU and US regulations, as long as the final substantial transformation, in this case bottling, occurs in Italy. A bottle labeled Product of Italy may contain oil from 4 different countries, none of them Italy, blended in an Italian facility. The consumer sees Italy on the label and infers Italian olives pressed in an Italian mill. The reality may be Tunisian oil and Greek oil blended in an Italian warehouse. The labeling system permits this inference without requiring any correction. Number 2. Any extra virgin olive oil without a harvest date. This is the freshness fraud loophole. Extra virgin olive oil is at its peak quality within 12 to 18 months of harvest. After that, the polyphenols, antioxidants, and volatile compounds that define both the flavor and the health benefits degrade significantly. In the EU, harvest dates are increasingly required or voluntarily disclosed by premium producers. In the United States, there is no requirement to include a harvest date on olive oil. Many mass-market brands use a best-buy date that may be 2 or 3 years from bottling, which itself may be months or years after harvest. A consumer buying a bottle with a best-buy date of 2027 may be purchasing oil pressed in 2023. The oil was arguably no longer extra virgin a year before the consumer bought it. But the label says extra virgin, the best buy date says it is still good, and no regulatory mechanism exists to reconcile these contradictions. Number 1. The FDA, the agency that chose not to define extra virgin. The Food and Drug Administration has the legal authority to establish a standard of identity for olive oil. The American Olive Oil Producers Association formally petitioned the agency in 2020, arguing that without enforceable standards, widespread mislabeling and fraud are inevitable. The USDA maintains voluntary grading standards that align with the International Olive Council's classifications. But voluntary standards enforced by no one protect no one. California took matters into its own hands in 2014, passing the grade and labeling standards for olive oil, which require chemical and sensory testing for producers of 5,000 gallons or more. California's standards are among the strictest in the world. They apply only in California. The other 49 states have no equivalent. The federal government has none. The result is an American olive oil market where the term extra virgin appears on nearly every bottle regardless of quality. The most common fraud is not mixing olive oil with soybean oil, but selling degraded, defective, or old olive oil under a premium grade label. The consumer cannot verify origin, quality, freshness, or authenticity, and the regulatory system has been asked to act and has declined. The EU enforces its honey directive. The EU enforces its protected designation of origin system for cheeses and oils. The EU enforces olive oil grade standards with testing, fines, and criminal prosecution. The EU requires harvest dates on premium olive oils and laboratory testing for deodorization and adulteration. The United States has voluntary standards, industry-funded testing programs, and a FDA that has been petitioned for a standard of identity and has not responded. The food and beverage industry spent over $23 million lobbying in 2025. Olive oil trade groups lobby both for and against standards, depending on whether they represent importers or domestic producers. And the consumer stands in the grocery aisle, staring at 20 bottles that all say extra virgin, with no way to determine which ones actually are. What is the alternative when your government will not protect you? You protect yourself. California Olive Ranch, based in Northern California, produces olive oil under California's strict grade and labeling standards that require chemical and sensory testing of every batch. Their extra virgin designation is backed by actual testing, not voluntary compliance. Cobram Estate, an Australian producer with operations in California, consistently passes both sensory and chemical testing in independent studies. They disclose harvest dates and maintain transparency standards that exceed federal requirements. Costarina, based in New York, sources single-origin oil from Greece with verifiable harvest dates, polyphenol content disclosure, and third-party quality testing. They represent the transparency model that mainstream brands could adopt but choose not to. Graza, a newer brand based in New York, has built its business on single-origin, harvest-dated olive oil with transparent sourcing from Spain. They have disrupted the category by proving that transparency and quality are marketable at accessible price points. Lucini, an Italian brand that consistently performed well in UC Davis testing, represents the minority of imported brands that actually meet extra virgin standards when independently tested. For European imports, look for PDO or PGI certification, which indicates the oil comes from a specific region and meets legally enforceable production standards. Parmigiano Reggiano has DOP. Real extra virgin olive oil from Tuscany, Crete, or Kalamata should carry equivalent regional certifications. These producers prove that selling genuine extra virgin olive oil with verifiable quality, traceable origin, and transparent harvest dating is commercially viable. The others sell the words extra virgin because the words have no enforceable meaning in the American market. The words have no enforceable meaning because the FDA has been asked to give them meaning and has chosen not to. When shopping for olive oil, look for a harvest date, not just a best buy date. Buy oil harvested within the last 12 months whenever possible. Look for specific geographic origin, not just country of origin. A bottle that says product of Italy tells you where it was bottled. A bottle that says oil from olives grown in the Setia region of Crete tells you where the olives came from. Look for California-produced oils that must meet the state's strict testing standards. Look for PDO or PGI seals on European imports. Buy oil in dark glass bottles, as light accelerates quality degradation. Be deeply skeptical of any extra virgin olive oil priced below $8 per liter, because at that price, the economics of genuine extra virgin production simply do not work. The oil may be real olive oil, but it is almost certainly not extra virgin by the time it reaches your kitchen. Let me be direct about what this investigation has revealed. The United States has no legally enforceable federal standard of identity for extra virgin olive oil. The USDA offers voluntary grading standards that are enforced by no one. The FDA was formally petitioned for a standard of identity in 2020 and has not acted. The UC Davis Olive Center found that 69% of imported extra virgin olive oils failed sensory standards in testing conducted in 2010 and 2011. The National Consumers League found that more than half of extra virgin olive oils from major grocery stores failed to meet grade standards. NAOOA's industry-funded 2024 study found no adulteration in the top 15 brands but acknowledged quality failures in some samples. The EU enforces olive oil standards with testing, fines, and criminal prosecution. Europol arrested 11 people in 2023 for a 260,000-liter adulteration scheme. Italy's Calabrian mafia has been implicated in olive oil fraud schemes worth $16 billion annually across the broader food fraud sector. The most common fraud is not adding soybean oil to olive oil. It is selling degraded, deodorized, or old olive oil under the extra virgin label because no American law defines what extra virgin means, and no American agency tests to verify it. California established strict testing standards in 2014. 49 other states and the federal government have not. The American Olive Oil Producers Association, the people who actually grow olives in this country, formally asked the FDA to regulate them. The FDA declined. The regulatory system is not absent by accident. It is absent by choice. A choice sustained by industry lobbying, agency inaction, and a marketplace where the most profitable outcome is the one where every bottle says extra virgin and no one checks. Every bottle of mislabeled olive oil purchased funds the importers who lobby against mandatory testing. Every premium price paid for degraded oil rewards the companies that profit from the gap between the label and the contents. Every year the FDA declines to establish a standard of identity is another year that the American consumer pays extra virgin prices for a product that no one can verify is extra virgin. Legal does not mean authentic. It means no one ever required proof.